If you think the story of Jeffrey Epstein is simply about the horrific crimes of a rogue billionaire, you have been lied to. This is the definitive true story of how international intelligence agencies used industrialized blackmail and hidden cameras to secretly control the people who rule our world. The world is composed of visible maps and invisible territories. While visible maps detail borders and trade routes, invisible territories are charted through leverage, secrecy, and the silent accumulation of compromising information. To understand the modern geopolitical landscape, one must peer into the shadows where intelligence networks, extreme wealth, and organized criminality converge. The history of Jeffrey Edward Epstein is a study of how human vulnerability was industrialized to construct a clandestine empire capable of steering global politics. To comprehend this operation, the narrative must begin in the working-class geography of a mid-20th century American metropolis. Born in 1953, the grandson of immigrants, Epstein was raised in the sea-swept borough of Brooklyn, a landscape defined by close-knit communities and industrial ambition. A prodigious aptitude for mathematics and a trained classical pianist, he graduated high school early in 1969, later studying at the prestigious Cooper Union. Crucially, he never completed a degree. This academic void makes his ascent into elite circles perplexing, suggesting traditional meritocracy was bypassed for unseen avenues. In 1973, at age 20, this college dropout was hired to teach mathematics and physics at the elite Dalton School in Manhattan. The Dalton School was a cultural nexus for the progeny of America's wealthiest families. Its principal was Donald Barr, a former officer of the OSS. The OSS would later evolve into the CIA. Within these halls, the young teacher first brushed against the true architects of American wealth. The transition from a dismissed educator to a high-stakes financial operator required a proving ground built on absolute deception. In 1987, Stephen Hoffenberg hired the young financier to work at Towers Financial Corporation, paying him $25,000 a month as a consultant. Towers Financial morphed into one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history, defrauding investors of over $400 million. They even attempted a corporate raid on Pan Am Airways in 1988, a bid that failed partly due to the tragic Lockerbie bombing. This environment served as the ultimate masterclass in grand-scale financial manipulation and the creation of opaque shell companies. During this era, a pivotal alliance was formed with Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder of a massive retail empire. Wexner granted his associate unprecedented power of attorney, handing over nearly absolute control of his financial affairs and charitable foundations. An individual virtually unknown was suddenly managing a fortune exceeding $1 billion, setting the stage for an unparalleled network of control. If you are finding this deep dive into the hidden architecture of global power insightful, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. Your support is absolutely vital in helping us continue to uncover these complex global truths and bring these exhaustive documentaries to light. This staggering influx of unearned capital provided the foundation for a global geographic footprint of extreme isolation. To wield influence over the most powerful individuals on the planet, an operative must completely control the environment in which the targets operate. The urban epicenter of this dark real estate portfolio was the Herbert N. Strauss House, located at 9 East 71st Street in Manhattan. The history of this building is as complex and tragic as its final owner. Commissioned in 1928 by Herbert Strauss, an heir to the Macy's fortune whose parents, Isidore and Ida Strauss, famously died holding hands on the sinking RMS Titanic in 1912. The mansion was designed to be a showplace of wealth. Strauss commissioned Horace Trombauer to design a 40-room French Renaissance palace. No expense was spared on the 50-foot-wide townhouse, which included imported French limestone, meticulously decorated with carvings and entire 18th-century rooms from Europe. However, the catastrophic stock market crash of October 29, 1929, halted its completion. Strauss died in 1933, having spent approximately $600,000 without ever living in his dream home. Burdened by annual taxes of $17,000, the Strauss family donated the uncompleted white elephant to the Roman Catholic Archbishopric of New York. It served as an extension of a hospital and later housed the Birchwathen private school for decades. In 1989, Leslie Wexner purchased the property for $13,200,000, converting it back into a palatial private home. Ownership was later controversially transferred to the disgraced financier for virtually nothing, $0 documented in some trusts, transforming it into a 51,000 square foot intelligence-gathering fortress. Under his absolute control, the mansion became a monument to excessive wealth and paranoia, featuring a taxidermy tiger, a hanging bridal sculpture, and walls adorned with photographs of global leaders. Yet its most critical features were hidden from plain sight. Visitors reported a bathroom reminiscent of a James Bond movie, hidden beneath a stairway, and lined entirely with lead to provide shelter from electronic signals, supplied with closed-circuit television screens concealed in a cabinet beneath the sink. Most chillingly, whistleblower Maria Farmer testified that she was shown a hidden media room where men constantly monitored feeds from tiny pinhole cameras. The primary purpose of these unblinking mechanical eyes was the industrial production of digitized blackmail, serving as the ultimate geopolitical insurance policy. According to federal officials, these cameras captured the deepest vulnerabilities of the global elite, archiving them onto disks locked away in heavily guarded safes. This urban fortress was mirrored by a remote maritime sanctuary located in the Caribbean Sea, within the volcanic archipelago of the United States Virgin Islands. The geography and history of these islands are deeply tied to colonial exploitation and the grim economics of human suffering. The islands are mountain peaks rising sharply from the Caribbean ocean floor, dominated by the relentless flow of the trade winds near the equator. Originally known as the Danish West Indies, the islands of St. Thomas and St. John were colonized by Denmark starting in 1672. To resolve a severe lack of manpower for their lucrative sugarcane plantations, the Danish West India Company engaged in one of the most appalling crimes. They transported an estimated 120,000 enslaved Africans across the Atlantic, feeding a brutal plantation economy. The economy eventually collapsed following a massive uprising by enslaved people on St. Croix in July 1848, forcing the abolition of slavery. By the late 19th century, the islands had entered a steep economic decline, becoming a financial burden to Denmark. Driven by the strategic military pressures of World War I, the United States successfully pressured Denmark into selling the islands. On March 31, 1917, known locally as Transfer Day, the territory was formally transferred to the United States. The sale was completed for the staggering sum of $25 million in solid gold coin, and it became an unincorporated territory. In this historically complex territory, nearly $8 million was transferred in April 1998 by a shell company named LSJ LLC. The funds were used to purchase Little St. James, a secluded 72-acre islet situated 2 miles off the southern coast of St. Thomas. Accessible only by private helicopter or a boat bearing the letters LSJ, the island was designed for total, unyielding environmental control. The infrastructure featured a main residence, multiple guest cabanas, and a private desalination system to ensure total self-sufficiency. The complex also included a helipad and a bizarre temple-like structure with a golden dome and bright stripes perched atop a hill. The true horror of this island, tragically dubbed by locals as Pedophile Island, was hidden deep within its luxurious details. In December 2025, the House Oversight Committee released unsettling, never-before-seen photographs from inside the island's structures. Among the banal images of bedrooms was a photograph of a room inexplicably containing a clinical, vintage dentist chair. Even more terrifying, the walls surrounding this chair were adorned with 12 eerie, orange-hued masks of men's faces with wide-open eyes. The presence of such equipment in a private sanctuary underscores the dark psychological domination exerted over the island's captives. This transformed a tropical paradise into a literal house of horrors. hidden away from the prying eyes of the world. By 2016, the operation expanded further with the acquisition of the neighboring Great St. James Island for over $22 million. This secured an even larger maritime perimeter of isolation, concluding a dark chapter in the territory's long history of exploitation. To complement the dense urban surveillance of Manhattan and the maritime isolation of the Caribbean, the architecture of control required a third geographic environment. This requirement was fulfilled by the vast, sweeping topography of the American Southwest. The geography of New Mexico is a sprawling canvas of high-altitude deserts, rugged mesas, and the towering peaks of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. It is a landscape defined by its stark, unforgiving beauty and its profound emptiness, where the horizon stretches uninterrupted for miles. This offered a level of terrestrial privacy impossible to achieve on the East Coast. Santa Fe, the capital city, sits at an elevation of nearly 7,000 feet, the highest altitude of any state capital in the Union. It was in this remote, arid expanse that the Zorro Ranch was established. Located in the small community of Stanley, New Mexico, this sprawling estate was purchased in 1993 from a former governor. The scale of the Zorro Ranch was staggering, encompassing over 7,600 acres of private desert land. At the heart of the property sat a massive 33,000 square foot hacienda, believed to be the largest residential structure in the state. The most critical operational features of the Zorro Ranch, however, were its aviation infrastructures. The compound was equipped with a private airstrip, a dedicated helicopter pad, and a massive hangar for commercial-sized private jets. This allowed for the discreet arrival and departure of international guests and politicians without the scrutiny of aviation authorities. The absolute geographic isolation ensured that once a guest arrived, they were entirely cut off from the outside world. For decades, the activities at the ranch remained shrouded in absolute secrecy. However, the legacy of abuse could not be permanently buried under the desert sands. Following the release of federal documents in 2024, state prosecutors took renewed action. The State Land Office discovered the disgraced financier held multiple agricultural leases spanning over 1,200 acres of trust land. Furthermore, the Attorney General officially reopened an investigation, launching physical searches of the massive compound. The ranch functioned as a terrestrial island where horrific patterns of exploitation were replicated under the relentless New Mexico sun. Buildings, no matter how grand, isolated or wired with hidden cameras, are merely the physical shells of an operation. A blackmail network of this magnitude, targeting the most sophisticated global elite, required a constant, discreet, and reliable flow of vulnerable individuals. This logistical nightmare was resolved through the establishment of a recruitment network that operated with the cold precision of a multinational corporation. The network was spearheaded by figures who expertly leveraged high society and cultural ambition as their hunting ground. The primary architect and operational manager of this human pipeline was Ghislaine Maxwell, the British socialite and daughter of a prominent media tycoon. Maxwell served as the indispensable bridge between the shadowy, dangerous world of extortion and the glittering, impenetrable upper crust of international high society. Prosecutors, journalists, and victims described the operation as a ruthless pyramid scheme of abuse. Vulnerable young women, once trapped and compromised, were offered financial incentives to recruit their own peers. This created an ever-expanding web of exploitation that insulated the highest leadership from direct exposure. Their recruitment tactics were deeply insidious. For example, a lawsuit alleged that in 1994, Maxwell and her partners scouted a girl. They targeted a student at the Interlochen Center for the Arts, leveraging promises of educational tuition and mentorship to lure her. To mask the trafficking and facilitate movement across borders without suspicion, the operation deeply infiltrated the global fashion and modeling industries. If one wants to understand how elite trafficking truly operated as a system, one must look at modeling agencies. A key figure in this international pipeline was Jean-Luc Brunel, a prominent French modeling agent who initially gained fame with Karen models. He founded MC2 Model Management, which was reportedly financed with at least $1 million directly from the operation's central financier. Operating out of Paris, Miami, and New York, Brunel allegedly utilized the glamorous framework of the fashion industry to scout and transport women. This included minors from Eastern Europe and South America, brought into the United States using specialized tourist and extraordinary talent visas. Former models testified that the agency system was designed to turn teenage girls into glamorized assets, placing them in overcrowded apartments. The system buried them in manufactured debt and conditioned them to normalize their own commodification. Agencies groomed targets to say yes and smile through discomfort. Private islands and townhouses simply refined the extortion. Brunel's operations were deeply intertwined with the highest echelons of the network, as revealed by emails from the Department of Justice. Agencies routinely forwarded measurements and portfolios of young women directly to management, treating human beings as catalog commodities. Brunel would ultimately meet a dark and abrupt end while awaiting trial for the rape of a minor. He was found hanged in his high-security cell at La Santé prison in Paris in February 2022. Early media reports called it a suicide, permanently silencing another critical node in the international supply chain. How did such an expansive, highly visible trafficking ring evade federal law enforcement and the world's premier intelligence agencies for decades? The chilling answer, posited by extensive investigative research, is that they may not have been evading intelligence agencies at all. They may have been working for them. When the first major criminal investigation occurred in Florida in 2008, the defense team secured an unprecedented, remarkably lenient non-prosecution agreement. The federal prosecutor who authorized this controversial deal, Alexander Acosta, reportedly later explained that he was instructed to back down. He was explicitly told by the defense team that the target belonged to intelligence and that the matter was strictly above his pay grade. Investigative researchers such as Whitney Webb have traced these espionage ties back to the merging of organized crime and state intelligence after WW2s. The methodology of gathering compromat, compromising material, was not entirely new to the American political landscape. Webb draws historical parallels to the tactics of Roy Cohn, a notorious political fixer and mob attorney who pioneered the political favor bank, utilizing illicit surveillance and organized crime networks to gather extortion material on powerful judges, politicians, and business leaders. The modern operation was essentially the digitization and globalization of Cohn's localized favor bank, scaled to an industrial level. The sophistication of this global network points directly to the lineage of Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father, Ian Robert Maxwell, was a towering media mogul who lived a flamboyant life of wealth before his suspicious death at sea. Beneath the facade of a publishing magnate, Robert Maxwell was widely known to operate as a high-level asset for the Mossad. Maxwell was instrumental in an operation involving the theft of sophisticated intelligence-gathering software known as Enhanced Promise. Maxwell utilized his global business contacts to sell the rigged technology to dozens of countries, including China and Russia. This allowed Israeli intelligence to silently siphon highly classified information from governments worldwide. Former executive Ari Ben-Menashe claimed a young American financier was a frequent presence in Maxwell's London offices during the 80s. The financial lifeblood for this network allegedly stemmed from a secretive organization known as the Mega Group. Established in 1991 by Leslie Wexner and Charles Bronfman, consisting of the wealthiest business titans in America. Analysts draw parallels between the Mega Group and earlier covert organizations like the Sonneborn Institute. The Sonneborn Institute covertly procured arms and financing for the Haganah, bypassing neutrality acts through international gun running. Allegations surfaced that the Mega Group functioned in a similar vein, serving as a vehicle for influence operations within the United States. It was precisely then that Wexner handed total control of his fortune over to the man who would build the world's most sophisticated blackmail traps. These intelligence connections extended far beyond domestic political lobbying. They plunged straight into the dangerous and highly lucrative geography of international arms smuggling. According to testimonies from former associates like Stephen Hoffenberg, the burgeoning financier received specialized training in the early 1980s from British defense contractors. He learned the intricate mechanics of arms smuggling, money laundering, and the creation of untraceable offshore shell companies. During the protracted and bloody Iran-Iraq War, the operation was allegedly deeply involved in selling Chinese weapons to Iran through state-owned entities like Norinco. These covert activities were reportedly part of an operation running in parallel with the infamous Iran-Contra affair. This network involved working alongside Adnan Khashoggi, the billionaire Saudi arms dealer known as the Great Gatsby of the Middle East. Khashoggi amassed $4 billion brokering weapons deals between Western defense contractors and the Saudi royal family. The financial lifeblood for these illicit operations was channeled through the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. This institution was dismantled due to its profound ties to global terrorism, organized crime, and various state intelligence services. Newly released emails revealed correspondence as late as 2018 with an Iranian businessman discussing Boeing jets and US policy. The ultimate currency of this operation, however, was not weapons or cash, but the compromising material used to control global leadership. The geographical reach of this operation is best mapped by the flight logs of the private jet, notoriously dubbed the Lolita Express. These meticulously recorded flight manifests read like a directory of the transnational capitalist class. Former US President Bill Clinton flew on this aircraft dozens of times, including a 2002 trip to Africa. Donald Trump was also a passenger on multiple occasions during the 1990s. A 2011 email revealed the financier referring to Trump as the dog that hasn't barked, hinting at complex layers of mutual knowledge. The web-entangled titans like Leon Black, billionaire co-founder of Apollo Global Management, who paid millions for wealth management advice. Emails revealed the financier advised Black on how to deploy agents to silence a Russian model threatening to expose his affairs. This demonstrated the operation's terrifying utility as a private intelligence and intimidation firm for the elite. The ties to the Middle East were solidified through extensive meetings with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Records indicate the two men met over 30 times between 2013 and 2017, long after initial criminal convictions. They discussed the sale of corporate empires and technology investments in defense startups like Carbine. If an intelligence network possesses high-definition video evidence of world leaders engaged in illegal acts, those leaders cease to serve their electorates. They become manageable puppets, their foreign policies steered by the invisible hand of their blackmailers. The collapse of this unprecedented empire of blackmail culminated in a highly suspicious death in a Manhattan federal holding cell in August 2019. Officially ruled a suicide by hanging, the demise of the central figure ignited a firestorm of public distrust that profoundly altered modern political discourse. Between 2024 and early 2026, a massive cache of previously redacted court documents and internal government files was thrust into the public domain, primarily stemming from defamation lawsuits filed by courageous survivors like Virginia Giuffre. In the United States, the scandal breathed immense life into populist movements and the sprawling QAnon ideology, which posited that a covert deep-state cabal of satanic elites was operating a worldwide trafficking ring to control world events. Donald Trump's political mythos was heavily built on the premise that he was the ultimate outsider, the only person rich and courageous enough to fight back against this elitist corruption. However, the release of the files, which highlighted the deep, historical ties of leaders across the entire political spectrum, caused a profound fracturing. The realization that the machinery of blackmail did not distinguish between political parties bred a deep, pervasive cynicism regarding the integrity of democratic institutions. Fulfilling a campaign promise under immense public pressure, Attorney General Pam Bondi oversaw the declassification and release of nearly 3,500,000 pages. In February 2026, under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, this massive data dump revealed startling new details. including a previously undisclosed United States Drug Enforcement Agency investigation targeting the financier and 14 other individuals for suspicious money transfers, possibly linked to illegal narcotics and prostitution in the Virgin Islands. Yet, despite this massive data release, the core mystery remains fiercely guarded by the state. In July 2025, the United States Department of Justice released a memorandum concluding that no definitive client list existed, that there was no credible evidence of widespread blackmail, and affirming the ruling of suicide. This conclusion sparked intense outrage. Critics and researchers pointed to the overwhelming physical evidence: the disconnected surveillance cameras in Palm Beach, the vanished hard drives, the lead-lined bathrooms in Manhattan, and the horrifying dentist chair photographs released by the House Oversight Committee. Prominent figures, including Howard Lutnick, publicly alleged that the financier was the greatest blackmailer ever, suggesting that hidden videotapes were traded to secure his original, incredibly lenient 18-month prison sentence. The legacy of this dark chapter forces a complete re-examination of historical events, international treaties, and high-level political appointments. It reveals a world where the lines between international espionage, extreme wealth, and organized criminality are entirely erased. It represents the pinnacle of blackmail capitalism, where the compulsive production of compromat is the structural engine of wealth and power. As the dust settles on the heavily redacted documents and the empty, sun-drenched beaches of the Caribbean islands, the viewer is left to confront a deeply unsettling reality. Is the global political landscape truly shaped by the democratic will of the people, or is it secretly steered by the hidden tapes of the elite? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below.